welcome back to Everything College Football Podcast. Today, I'm back again with my man, Rowdy. How you doing, Rowdy?
Doing all right. How are you?
I'm wonderful, man. And today, we're going to be breaking down the top 10 teams for our way too early preseason top 10. I did the evens. Rowdy did the odds. I went with Indiana at number 10. That's going to kick things off. This team went 6-2 with close losses to Ole Miss and Ohio State. But outside of being one-dimensional offense, this is a really fun, lethal passing attack.
Yeah, I think Michael Penix is a guy to watch. Next year, I think he can really go up a lot of draft boards. I think he has a lot of talent, and we saw him go against Ohio State. He did really good against Ohio State. Granted, a lot of other teams did as well, but that really put his name on the map and said, hey, if he can do this against a top 10, top 5 team, he can probably continuously do this throughout the season. But unfortunately, it was cut short due to an injury.
Yeah, another torn ACL. Unfortunate that Penix is having troubles staying healthy. But yeah, 500 yards, 5 touchdowns against Ohio State. That was a really impressive outing, though. Of course, they had the secondary issues, but there was pressure in his face all afternoon. The biggest part of his success is a nice, talented receiving core. Walt Filer departs, but they return a good amount of talent. Peyton Hendershot, Miles Marshall, David Ellis, Ty Freifogel, and then DJ Matthews transfers over from Florida State. Ty Freifogel, a guy I know you're really interested to watch this season.
Yeah, Ty Freifogel, and he's same thing with Michael Penix. He made a name for himself in that game, and continuously he kept it up throughout the year. DJ Matthews, another guy that I'm looking forward to see because Florida State, they have a lot of talent. They recruit pretty well over except for the past few years. But DJ Matthews is a elusive receiver, and I think he will really be a nice weapon for Penix in that receiving core this upcoming year.
Yeah, I feel like the offensive key, though, is getting Penix back healthy. Jack Tuttle, he wasn't terrible in his few starts, but, he wasn't very effective. 362 yards in 3 games. They just need better out of the former 4-star recruit. Flipping script to this defense, though, they get every single starter back besides one, Jamar Johnson. His production at corner is going to be tough to replace. Second in tackles, and I believe he was also second or first in interceptions. T1 Mullen, he's a stud. The brother of a current NFL player. Tell us a little bit about T1.
Oh, well, like you said, he's got that football in his blood. I can't remember the first Mullen's name in the NFL, but Trayvon Mullen, right? Went to Clemson, really good corner. And T1, they're both from the South Florida area. They breed them really good down there, the defensive backs, and I think he's going to be a key leader in the secondary this upcoming year.
Yeah, getting Mullen back, he's going to be one of the top corners, probably top defensive backs in all of college football. Also, linebacker Micah McFadden, this guy, he did everything for Indiana. One of those Tom Allen guys that he really likes. Led the team in tackles for lost sacks. This is a ball-hawking secondary, though. These guys force turnovers. It's a really underrated unit. I think that's going to be, the backbone of this football team in 2021.
Yeah, I agree. Their offense is going to do really good regardless. We assume it will. So if their defense can continuously step it up, they're number 10 right now and are way too early, but they could, once the season starts, go up from there.
Yeah, I think this is a legit, national title contender. A lot of people, laugh at that. Indiana national title contender, but they are no joke, and they showed that against Ohio State.
Right.
Moving to number 9, you pegged North Carolina to be the 9th-ranked team. Go ahead and kind of explain that. They lose a lot of production, but you're still really high on this team.
Well, I think North Carolina's, let's start with their issues that they had last year. They did not do great defensively. They allowed, 22 points a game?
They allowed over 30 points per game last season.
Yeah. I guess I'm thinking of someone else. That's my mistake. But, yeah, their defense was quite lackluster. They do have a few big names that I really like, Desmond Evans and Miles Murphy. Miles Murphy, both top 247 prospects. And I think that those guys can really be the backbone of this defense. They're going to get a lot more reps this year because of the departures that they have of
Chaz Surratt, he's one of those guys who departs.
Chaz Surratt, right? Chaz Surratt, and in the middle, he's once he moved from quarterback to middle linebacker, he did really good, especially with Mac Brown being there.
Yeah, it's interesting, guys transferring or moving over from quarterback to linebacker. I know I forget his name, but a guy at Iowa State did a couple years ago also led the team in every single category. Chaz Surratt just did that himself. Tony Grimes, another one of those young guys you talked about, top-ranked corner coming out of high school.
Yeah.
He was supposed to be in high school this past season. He only allowed a 6% QBR, I think, or something like that. Pretty impressive. Should be interesting to see what he does with more snaps, more development. The touch basis on this defense, so they get Tamon Fox back. That's big up front for them in the front seven. Linebacker Jeremiah Grimmel, too. He's another guy I'm looking forward to seeing. I think this defense is going to improve. I mean, they kind of have to for North Carolina to be a legitimate contender because we already know about this offense, and you can go ahead and allude to how impressive this offense is, Rowdy.
Well, they lose a few guys. Coffrey Brown is not a guy that they lose, but they lost Daz Newsome, one of their top guys. But I think Coffrey Brown is going to be one of Sam Howell's top targets. That he is he's a freshman, going to be a sophomore this year, I believe. And Sam is one of those guys. Sam Howell, one of the guys that you can be, kind of a Tom Brady-esque quarterback. He may not have on a year-in, year-out basis that top talent around him, but he's such a good quarterback, he's going to get you the ball, and as long as you get the ball in your hands, then you'll be okay, and you're going to get yards. He can kind of do it a little bit with his feet. He's not much of a runner, but he can extend, and I think he's going to definitely be one of the top quarterback draft picks in the upcoming draft. I'm really looking forward to see how he does with the offense. The run game is going to be something I'm looking forward to. They get Ty Chandler from Tennessee after losing Javonte Williams and Michael Carter. So I think, and those guys both had 1,000 yards and 33 total touchdowns in 2020 to 2021. So it's going to be kind of a challenge for Mac Brown to, readjust the offense. I mean, there's a lot of guys that they lost all on both sides of the ball, but Mac Brown is one of the best coaches in college football history for a reason. So we're going to see how he can step up to this challenge.
Yeah, Ty Chandler comes over from Tennessee. I know a guy I've really liked, a moderate backup at Tennessee. He's done solid when he's a starter. I think he's going to fit really well in replacing the production lost. I think it's almost impossible to account for all the production lost, but Ty Chandler should come in 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns. At least keep this offense to its true identity of sticking to the RPO game, play action. That's allowed Sam Howell to have 3,500 plus yards and 30 touchdowns in back-to-back seasons.
Right.
Their defense, 115th in yards per game allowed, or yards allowed total, I should say. They also forced only 11 turnovers. They need to be better altogether in that category. But outside that, North Carolina, there's a lot to like about them. I think that this is legit a team in the ACC that can contend.
Yeah, I think moving to their secondary, that like Tony Grimes, it starts with him. He needs to be the leader in the secondary. He needs to be their top guy, and I expect him to be. And if they can continuously if they can move up defensively, they're already pegged as the second best ACC team in my opinion. They just need to continuously get that defense up because their offense is what makes them so great. But they've had many issues in regards to, when they played A&M, their defense just couldn't stop them, and they had some offensive woes as well. But A&M they're a team that they had fun with their defense, and they can't have that if they want to be a legitimate contender for the ACC championship and possibly a national championship.
Yeah, moving ahead to a team that has a proven elite defense, the Cincinnati Bearcats. This team went 9-1 last season, 31-6 over the past 3 seasons. Luke Fickell has done a phenomenal job, boosting this team not just on defense but offense as well.
Yeah, and it starts with Desmond Ridder, their quarterback, over 2,800 yards and 31 total touchdowns. He's probably one of the best dual-threat quarterbacks going into this year. He is one of the main reasons why Cincinnati had great success, and although you can't take away from their run game, which had 212.4 rushing yards a game, they did really good offensively and definitely showed that against Georgia. Unfortunately, they lost, but that was one of the best games of the New Year's Six Bowls.
Yeah, I think they need some more speed in the receiving corps, but they really like who they have at target. Their targets wise, but I'm really impressed by this lethal running attack. They have Jared Oaks, Jerome Ford, a former Alabama commit. I think those guys are all coming back for 2021. I really like this offense to continue to progress, get better, especially Desmond Ridder. There's really a lot to like about this team altogether. We just touched on the offense, but on their defense, 8th in scoring defense, 13th in yards per game. They get a lot back, Myjah Sanders included, and they also get a lot back in the secondary.
Yeah, like you said, they do get a lot back in defense. They just lost only 2 of their safeties, but their secondary is still going to be pretty strong. They have veteran leadership back there. Their corners showed that they were one of the top defenses or one of the top secondaries in the group of 5, possibly the country if you want to stretch that far. And if they can, I'm sure that they will probably come back next year and show why they have been labeled that way.
Yeah, they only gave up over 360 yards once, and that was the Georgia, where JT Daniels kind of had a field day. But, they played UCF, SMU, Memphis, high-powered offenses. They held those guys in check. They lose both safeties in the back end, but Ahmad Gardner, Kobe Bryant, Javon Hicks, all those guys are coming back. Guys I like to watch. I'm really impressed by those guys, and I think they're going to start to get national recognition here soon. Same with linebacker Jarrell White. He's had a very steady career for the Bearcats. Each and every year he's at the top of the tackles and tackles for loss list. Do you see this team, right back in the college football playoff consideration?
Yeah, I think they do. We talked about this in a podcast with Quint Kesnick a few weeks ago, where should we expand the playoff to maybe 6 to 8 teams, have your top five, Power Five teams, and then that one at-large Group of Five team. And I think Cincinnati very well could be that at-large Group of Five team that can sneak in. But it's just so hard for Group of Five teams to get in, as we've seen. UCF looked like one of the best. What was it, 2017? UCF looked like one of the best Group of Five teams we'd seen, and they didn't get into the playoff. But Cincinnati, I'm sure that they're going to be, they smell blood in the water. They want to. There's a lot of teams that are questionable on if they're going to stay consistent this upcoming year. I think Cincinnati can possibly sneak their way in if they stay consistent.
And, they have the opportunities. They play Indiana and Notre Dame on the road next season. I'd expect both of those teams to be within the top 15, so they will have the opportunities as long as they can take care of business in conference. Houston, a few years ago, was unable to do that, but they beat 2 top 5 teams, so they were in consideration. But I think they have the resume this year to certainly get it done. I think the seniors are buying into that as well.
I'm with you on that one.
Next, we move to number 7. Rowdy, you like the Aggies. They lose 4 starters on the offensive line, but that's not a big concern for you.
No, I think their offensive line will still be okay. Jimbo Fisher, he recruits the position pretty well, and then Kenyon Green, one of the top offensive linemen that he has brought in there, 5-star guy, according to 247, and he's probably going to be one of the first offensive linemen off the board whenever he declares for the NFL draft, or when he's eligible, I should say. And they have had a great, impressive rushing duo of Aeneas Smith and Isaiah Spiller. Those guys really showed out against UNC. They had a field day, and I think you can also throw in, some of the guys they lost on offense, and the receivers, but they're going to be made up with Damon Demas. He didn't play this past year, but I think he will be a feature guy for whoever the quarterback is at A&M.
Yeah, getting Caleb Chapman back also helps add some depth. And Jalen Weidemeyer, Aeneas Smith, and H-back, he can, get in the backfield, make plays, go out wide. He actually led the Aggies in receiving in most receiving categories last season. Isaiah Spiller, Devin Achane, these guys are going to be bell cow backs, I would expect. Because Haynes King, we expect him to be the quarterback. We'll touch on him in a second. But back to Spiller and the running backs, these guys are going to be leaned on heavily, especially for a young offensive line, you should say. These guys are going to have to be exceptional picking up yardage, especially in short yardage situations. I think Jimbo Fisher's thrilled with who he has at running back, though.
Yeah, and I think he's even more a little thrilled about who he has at quarterback now. I mean, obviously, the year of eligibility, they would have loved to have had Kellen Mond come back for a 5th year, but I don't think they're going to be. It's kind of a question mark at the quarterback position, and it starts with Haynes King. He got some playing time last year. He is a great dual threat prospect. What ran a 4.5 out of high school. He's a guy that I think will try to replicate Kellen Mond and show that he can be the future quarterback at Texas A&M. So I think one thing we could see is a little bit more running from King. We could see a little bit more option play. They do run the RPO quite a bit, but I think Haynes King is more of a pure runner than Kellen Mond. He's a faster guy. Get him out in the open field, it's going to be hard to catch him, and that's the same thing with Achane and Isaiah Spiller. So they get both of those guys in the backfield. I mean, I don't know. We could see some Ravens type of offense, Baltimore Ravens offense. I don't know, but we'll see.
Yeah, King is a super athletic guy. He also has impressive ball placement outside the pocket. You already know Jimbo Fisher is going to find ways to utilize his skills. He's a really high ceiling player. We've yet to see a lot from him, but me and you we both expect big things from him, and he has the right coach, guiding him as well.
Yeah, to finish it off, on offense, Jalen Weidemeyer, you said his name earlier. I think he is probably going to be one of, if not the top tight end in college football next year. A lot of guys left this year. It's probably between him and Michael Mayer, Notre Dame's tight end. With Kyle Pitts being gone, Brevin Jordan being gone, Pat Freiermuth being gone, there's that tight end room for who is the best tight end in the country is kind of open, and I think it's going to be between Weidemeyer and Meyer. Moving
ahead to the defense, they were very physical last year. They were the top defense in the SEC in terms of yards per game allowed. They lose Bobby Brown up front, Buddy Johnson rather. That hurts them, but I think this defense is really just going to reload in 2021.
Yeah, and they're reloading with DeMarvin Leal. He's a great defensive interior D lineman. You can kind of shift him around here and there. Secondary, Jalen Jones and Leon O'Neal. They're both a great secondary. Jalen Jones was a freshman last year. Really showed out for the Aggies, and Leon O'Neal's been a consistent, boomstick back there. He's really good. I think that the secondary will be fine. A&M's defense really improved. last year, and I think that they will. I don't know if they'll take a step back, but I think they'll kind of stay the same, and that's fine as long as their offense can just continuously get better. Then I think they're going to be really set for a potential SEC championship game.
Yeah, Tyree Johnson, he's another one of those notables to watch. The production was kind of scattered throughout the unit. They collectively play great together, kind of like Georgia. Nobody really stands out on the stat sheet, but they play great together, and that's the formula for success, it seems. And I think Texas A&M fits the mold quite well.
I'm with you.
Moving to number 6, the Iowa State Cyclones. They went 9-3. They lost the season opener to Louisiana Lafayette by double digits, and then they pretty much went on a tear. They only lost to Oklahoma State and Oklahoma in the rematch for the Big 12 title by a combined 9 points. Let's start with this offense. Breece Hall, Brock Purdy. What do you expect from this unit?
Well, Brock Purdy, he will be the most seasoned quarterback in college football. He is a guy that you tell him to jump backwards, he's going to jump backwards. He's a coachable guy, and he's shown that during his tenure. Matt Campbell's really done great with him. Breece Hall, he is going to be coming back, and he'll be one of the top names to watch. Probably a Heisman contender. But Iowa State, they're one of the teams that they may have Brock Purdy and Breece Hall, but they also have a lot of different names. Like you said, with Georgia, and they have guys that get it done regardless. They may not put up great numbers, but it doesn't matter because they're still getting wins, and they're only 2 losses, like you said. This was one of the best years that Iowa State's had, and they made it to a New Year's Six bowl. So they showed that Matt Campbell showed that this team they're there to stay, and they returned 21 of 22 starters. So those guys are experienced, and they are definitely ready to run it back for another potential Big 12 championship.
Yeah, impressive development from Matt Campbell. A lot to be excited about with Iowa State. Speaking of big numbers, Breece Hall led the FBS with almost 1,600 rushing yards. Also had 23 touchdowns. Their offense, I really like it. It's they don't make a lot of mistakes. They have balance. Xavier Hutchinson. They also at receiver they have a great tight end trio. Chase Allen, Charlie Kolar. These guys are really buying into the chance of gearing up and making a legit playoff run, despite not having the greatest attention from the media. I think on offense, and then move ahead to defense. These guys are just probably the most complete team in college football.
Yeah, you're more high on Iowa State than I am. I think the Big 12 is it's kind of still a toss-up. You seem to think that Iowa State's probably one of the best teams that they can challenge Oklahoma for that top spot. But they bring back defensively Mike Rose, Defensive Player of the Year for the Big 12, and I think that's huge for him because he was one of the anchors for their defense, and I think they're going to be a little frustrated about losing to Oklahoma in the Big 12 title and losing to Oklahoma State, and they're going to come back next year and they're going to have a little bit more blood in the water, especially that these guys are the same guys that played against them last year, so many of them coming back.
Yeah, Will McDonald, he's expected to be back. I'm not sure if an official decision has been made on him yet. He had 10.5 sacks last season. He's obviously instrumental to what they do up front. All-conference defensive back Greg Ellsworth as well coming back. A lot to like about this team either way you put it. But they do host Iowa on September 11th. They've lost 5 straight to the Cyclones. They're going to have to get over that hurdle. They've been particularly close games in the Campbell area, but they're still going to have to clear that hurdle to make a playoff run.
I'm with you.
Moving to number 5, Rowdy, you have the Ohio State Buckeyes at number 5, despite fresh off a national championship berth. How do you feel about Ohio State?
Well, Ohio State is a team that it's kind of weird. You can't tell if they're returning more guys than they're losing because they lose Justin Fields, obviously a Heisman contender, over the past 2 years, but he didn't get an invite this past year. But he was a top guy. A top draft pick. Josh Myers, Wyatt Davis, offensive lineman. Trey Sermon's gone, who, when he was lost in the Alabama in the national championship, it seemed as if their running game kind of faltered a little bit and it didn't succeed as much. They also lose big defensive lineman and Tommy Togiai and all their starting linebackers. So they have a lot to replenish defensively, but they're also returning an insane amount of guys. Thayer Munford, Jeremy Rucker, Marcus Williamson, Haskell Garrett, and Chris Olave, probably one of the biggest surprises in almost all of college football coming back. He was regarded as one of the top receivers, for the past 2 years, and he's going to come back with Garrett Wilson. And that's going to still be a great wide receiving core for whoever Ohio State has a quarterback.
Yeah, speaking of who the next guy up at quarterback is, I think C.J. Stroud, he kind of fills out the same categories as Fields. He has a strong arm, very athletic. He can make plays out of the pocket. He's young, of course, but he was highly rated out of high school. I think Ryan Day is going to have his development's going to be challenging, but I think it's going to be impressive. And I think with the tools he has around him, with, you said Wilson, Olave, Julian Fleming, Jackson Smith, and Ajibe, Master T. They also have a big 5-star in Travion Henderson showing up. I think he has all the tools to succeed. And there's no reason to be concerned about this offense.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think their running game might be a little bit more. It could falter, or it could be. It could be better. I'm not really sold on Master Teague as a clear-cut number one running back. I think he's a guy that you kind of need to split reps with because he's more of a ground and pound guy. And Ohio State runs a lot of plays out of shotgun, and they need to get their running backs incorporated more, and that's what I saw with Trey Sermon. So I think Travion Henderson could get on the field a little bit earlier than a lot of people may think. But I'm looking forward to him because he was one of the top, like you said, he's one of the top running backs in all of high school football last year. And I think whatever quarterback has, goes into whether it's C.J. Stroud or Kyle McCord, who's also a top guy that they're bringing in. I think he has the best wide receiving core in the entire country at his disposal.
Master Teague, a short yardage kind of guy, runs behind his shoulder pads, very tough. He might not be the full-time number one, but he still provides plenty of value to this offense. On defense, I think Haskell Garrett's probably the best defensive tackle in college football. But they're going to need more than just interior pressure to be, to get back to their 2019 ways of sorts on defense. They allowed almost 26 points per game. This secondary was just, god awful. What do they need to do to, get back to playing Ohio State football?
Well, Wade, you want to talk about Sean Wade? He didn't succeed this past season because he was primarily a nickel corner 2 years ago, whereas they had Jeff Okudah on the outside. They put Wade on the outside, and he got torched quite a bit. So I think that proves that Wade's more of a pure nickel corner, but they also have Sevyn Banks, who didn't do that great, but I think he's coming back, so he's going to do a little bit more. He should progress, and they also have two top corners coming in, Jordan Hancock, Ja'Kalen Johnson. I think those guys could possibly be a force. Josh Proctor, he's a guy from Owasso, Oklahoma. He's a great safety. I think he'll be one of the top guys in their secondary. They just the secondary really does need to step up. Like you said, they gave up 26 points, and we talked about it in Indiana. Indiana had a field day. Their receivers and Michael Penix had a field day with their secondary, as did Alabama. So I think the secondary is probably the biggest question mark defensively coming back because Ohio State just reloads at linebacker, and I think that they'll do the same at the defensive line position with Zach Harrison, Tyreek Smith, who decides to come back, and then Jack Sawyer, the third best player in the country, according to 247 Sports.
Yeah, sixth in rush defense. Ohio State was stout up front, but the pass defense was just not a very good whatsoever. The communication was an issue. They lacked overall playmaking. Like you said, Sean Wade, he didn't really thrive in the role that they expected him to. But yeah, they have recruited very well. I think the jury's going to be out for a little bit on this defense. I don't think you're going to see immediate improvements due to they lose a lot. Outside of the defensive line, I think that's pretty much set. But outside of that, linebackers, defensive backs, I think those spots are kind of up for grabs. So I'm not sure exactly if Ohio State will be a national. I don't know if they'll get back to the playoffs. Because the Big Ten is going to be very competitive this season. But plenty to watch out for when it comes to Ohio State.
Yeah, that's precisely why I have him at number 5. I don't think I could put him inside the top 4 right now because they have a lot of question marks. Even though they were just, they were the team that made it to the college football playoff, they also got waxed. So we got to see if they can bounce back from that. Ryan Day, he's a great coach, so I have no doubt that this team will still be a top 25 team, college football playoff contender. We're not exactly sure because, like I said, a lot of question marks, quarterback position, secondary, defense has to step up. So I'm really looking forward to them. I just don't know if they're a top 4 team.
Yeah, Kerry Coombs certainly has his work cut out for him. Moving to number 4, Oklahoma Sooners. These guys were red hot the end of the year. There's not too many people that wanted to play them. They won 8 straight to end the season after starting 1-2. Spencer Rattler is a big reason behind that. 3,000 plus yards, 30 touchdowns. I know you're very high on Rattler.
Yeah, I watched him on QB1. If you've seen QB1 on Netflix, he's one of the stars of it. A lot of people may not like him because of his ego or attitude. I think he just plays with a certain cockiness that I think you like to have in a quarterback. You like a guy that thinks he's, the best when he steps on the field. You want a guy that knows he's the best when he steps on the field, and that's Spencer Rattler. And he has arguably one of the best receiving corps in the entire country with him. Jaden Hazelwood, Theo Weiss has been really great, and probably one of the best sophomore receivers, anticipated going into this year, Marvin Mims. So I think Rattler and Oklahoma's going to put up points regardless. And I think Rattler and this wide receiving core are going to have fun next year.
Yeah, extremely talented receiving core. Rattler back. He was very down the stretch. He developed very well with those guys. Oklahoma was kind of off the radar after that 1-2 start, so people wouldn't recognize how impressive he was down the stretch. They lose their top 2 running backs though. That's not really a big concern though. They get Marcus Majors, Seth McGowan. Those guys are they're going to reload. Those guys were freshmen last year. They're going to reload at running back. Not too concerned about that. We would like to see increased production. Ramondre Stevenson, he's gone, but he kind of provided that towards the end of the season, which really made this offense lethal. But typically, they have balance that's pretty tough to contain.
Yeah, like you said, they typically reload. Ramondre Stevenson, I honestly thought he should have came back for another year. I thought it would have been best, and it would have, Oklahoma could have convinced him to, because here we are, we have him at number 4, and we're not the only people that have them at number 4 because of what they return, how well they played. Their defense, switching to the defense really quick, they played really well. They've improved steadily, but last year they really showed after that 1-2 start that their defense was. It almost looked as if their defense was one of their strong points in some of those losses, and their offense just couldn't get it going. And once they got Ramondre Stevenson back later in the year, he was one of the key reasons why they went on an 8-game win streak. Obviously he wasn't back for the 8-game streak, but he came back, and he really tore it up here at Oklahoma State. He ran for about 150 plus on Oklahoma State, who was regarded as one of the best run defenses in the entire country. So I'm really looking forward to see what they do at running back. Like you said, Seth McGowan, I'm really high on him, so I'm looking forward to see how he does, because they're going to have a great balance regardless of who they have back there.
Yeah, things really started to click, and getting Stevenson back and Ronnie Perkins really just added to that. They only allowed 365.5 yards per game during the 8-game winning streak. They really improved when it comes to takeaways. 2019, they were 121st, almost dead last in FBS and turnovers. This past season, they're 18th. The ball hawking secondary. They replaced Trey Brown, Trey Norwood. They only, those are the only 3 starters right now that I'm concerned with that they lose on defense, but they're massive losses.
Yeah, Nick Benito, I think, is a guy that's going to be the quarterback of the defense this year. He's been a great linebacker the past 2 years. Another highly rated top 247 recruit. I love to go back to those guys because it shows that, these guys are high in high school or great in high school. They can do the same things in the Big 12 or whatever conference they decide to go to. And Isaiah Thomas is going to be really great for them as well.
Yeah, Isaiah Thomas off the edge. He kind of, filled that void when Perkins was gone. Those two were really unblockable towards the end of the season, coming off the edge together. Clayton Smith, he's the 42nd overall ranked recruit. He's going to show up. I think he's going to get immediate playing time. To a school like Oklahoma, when they recruit big name, big high recruited players, I should say, on defense, those guys you expect them to show up and make an impact immediately. I think he's going to be another one of those guys. I think this is a playoff team. Of course, they were top 30 in points and yards per game allowed because the defense, they continue to progress. People are still going to have their doubts, though, until they step up and, can stop some offense in the playoffs, because that's been their biggest weakness, really, so that will have to, improve. But, overall, I think this team is plenty capable. They have the talent. They have the coaching. I expect this team to contend for a playoff spot.
Like you mentioned, with Ohio State, jury's going to kind of be out on them defensively because of their woes, and that's obviously been one of the biggest reasons why Oklahoma is essentially considered a joke when they get in the playoff, because doesn't matter their offensive firepower. They get in the playoff and they can't stop anybody, and even then sometimes they won't put up the points. So I think, like you said, with Ohio State, I think the jury's going to be out on them for a little bit, at least until they can prove that their defense is going to be top tier, not just in the Big 12, but in the entire country, because we've seen how they win against teams not in the Big 12, and it wasn't a good result.
Yeah, granted they did play some tough offenses in the playoff, but, still no excuses. We expect better from this defense. A high-end Power 5 school, Moving number 3, you have our national champions at number 3 in this spot. Kind of go ahead and elaborate on that.
Well, they have 3 Heisman finalists who will not be suiting up in an Alabama uniform next year. Najee Harris, Devontae Smith, the Heisman winner, and Mac Jones. However, you take out Mac Jones, you've got Bryce Young, who was a 5-star quarterback. According to 247, he's coming back. Well, he's going to be the guy next year. They have Brian Robinson. I think he might have declared. I'm not entirely sure, but if not, they have Trey Sanders.
Brian Robinson is back. I'm very excited. I'm very excited to see. Not to interrupt on you for a second, but Brian Robinson.
Oh, you're good. Go ahead.
I'm really excited to see what he can do. He's been a very impressive backup for Najee Harris over the years. He can make people miss an open field. He's very strong. They really used him for short yardage pickups when Najee was unavailable. I think he's gonna have a big season. I'm glad he returned to school for 2021.
I think with this Alabama, we're going to see a kind of a different Alabama run game because they leaned on Najee really heavily the past 2 years. This year, I think it's going to be a little bit more by committee with Jace McClellan and Trey Sanders and Brian Robinson. They're all talented running backs. And Trey Sanders, he was in a car accident. And it kind of cut into his PT, and then I believe his freshman year he tore his ACL, and he was the number one running back in that class, and so I'm really looking forward to see how he can do. Hopefully he can stay healthy and not kind of get the unfortunate woes out of his way. Granted, it's not all his fault, and you hate that for the kid because he's got his ceiling is so high, but that's it on the running backs. Wide receivers, they have. Jaleel Billingsley is a tight end, but he's a guy that can emerge into a top target, and I'm really looking forward to see Slade Bolden because he's going to take the spot of Jalen Waddle. Forgot to mention him. He's gone. So Jalen Waddle and Slade Bolden, when Waddle was out, Bolden came in. He's an elusive guy. So I'm really looking forward to see how the receivers can bounce back along with John Mechie as well.
Yeah, John Mechie, that deep threat. Alabama's also recruited very well at wide receiver. There's a lot of young guys that are going to come in and step in. Ja'Cory Brooks is a name I've been looking at. Jaleel Billingsley, like you said, this guy, you can really move him around. It's really fun to watch his film. He's an athlete listed at a tight end. He's a big body, but he can really play receiver. I think I expect big things out of him this season.
I could see Alabama using him almost as if Florida used Kyle Pitts. He's not, he's a big body guy. He's athletic. He's not quite Kyle Pitts. Don't get it twisted. Yeah. But he's a good blocker. Alabama loves their run blockers. And with Miller Forrestall being gone, he was one of their top guys as well. So he's going to get a little bit more playing time with Forrestall being gone. So, and you mentioned Ja'Cory Brooks. He's a South Florida kid. He's a heck of an athlete. He was at one point a 5-star recruit, kind of slipped in the rankings. I think I don't think it does him justice. I think he's a really big-bodied guy that he can get up there and get the ball like he showed at Booker T. So I'm really looking forward to seeing him as well.
Yeah, very youthful team. Also on the offensive line, they replaced 4 starters. Offensive tackle Evan Neal, he's back. I would expect him to slide the left tackle. Alabama recruited exceptionally on the offensive line. They landed J.C. Latham and Tommy Brockmeyer. They're both ranked inside the top 5 according to 247 Sports. I'm not really concerned about this offensive line. The youth will be a problem, but in terms of talent, there's not many like this one in the country.
Yeah, I'm with you. And then we'll switch to their defense. They get Christian Harris, Chris Allen, and Josh Jobe back. Jobe's he's going to be corner number 1 now that Patrick Surtain is out. And Surtain, Jobe got a lot of looks last year because Surtain, nobody wanted to throw it towards Surtain. He was arguably the top corner in the country, Jim Thorpe winner. So Josh Jobe is going to definitely be getting tested. And then along with Malachi Moore and Brian Branch, those are some guys whose playing times are only going to increase. And they had great freshman seasons last year.
Yeah, Malachi Moore is probably the best corner in the slot last season. He'll probably move over to a number 1 role. They also get Jordan Battle and Daniel Wright back in the back. And I think the secondary is kind of underrated because Surtain's going to be gone, so there's going to be a lot of unknown names to most people nationally. But I think, with Saban, who's a great DB coach, these guys are just going to probably be one of the better secondaries in all of college football.
Yeah, they were, they kind of gave up some yards to a few teams. They had some inconsistencies, but their offense really bailed them out. I think this year, I have them at 3, but I think it's because I'm not exactly sure what to expect from them entirely. It's hard for me to put them at number 1, and I think there's other teams that are more clear-cut that have more, or I should say less to prove. Alabama has a little bit more to prove. Can their offense still be as explosive with Bryce Young, because Mac Jones was there for quite a few years, riding behind Tua and Jalen Hurts. So I'm really looking forward to see how Young steps in. But I think he adds an entirely different dynamic that Saban, hasn't had really since Blake Sims, as a guy that can be a true dual threat runner. Jalen Hurts. But it seems as if they wanted to really use him
as effective as a passer. That was my biggest concern with him early.
Yeah. I think Bryce Young's going to be way more effective than Jalen Hurts was as a passer at Alabama.
Yeah, I put in an article. I think Bryce Young's going to have an amplified effect of Jalen Hurts with his legs and his arm. I think he's a much better passer, in terms of skill set. Of course, he's a young guy. We'll see how they fit him in there. Bill O'Brien. Another name I'd like to mention, defensive tackle Fadarian Mathis. He's going to be a breakout star up front. He clogged his A-gap. He's a premier run stopper. They're not going to be able to run anything his way. That's the guy I'm also glad returned to school. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's an All-American or an Outland Trophy finalist.
I'm with you.
Moving to number 2, the Georgia Bulldogs, man. How about this offense? I don't think Georgia fans have ever been this excited. They get 14 starters back. Daniels under center. He averaged over 307 passing yards per game. All 4 games he started, the Bulldogs had 400-plus yards in. What are you expecting from Daniels and a pretty talented receiving core heading into 2021?
Well, we mentioned, it's going to sound weird comparing the two, but Tony Grimes, he was a guy that went up in his recruiting class. He enrolled a year early. JT did the exact same thing at USC, and we saw what he could do at USC very early at such a young age. Fortunately, it was cut short due to injury, but we're seeing he's picking up right where he left off here at Georgia, and I think it's almost blasphemous to think that he wasn't the starter at the beginning of this year with Dwan Mathis and Stetson Bennett switching between roles, because Georgia offense, excuse me, almost lost to Arkansas week 1 or week 2, and that was something that really raised a lot of eyebrows. It's like, is this Georgia team a phony, or are they just kind of having that COVID layoff effect? And I think it was more or less the COVID layoff effect, because when we saw JT Daniels in under center, it was an entirely different dynamic. The run game has been stellar. Zamir White, James Cook, those guys coming back. I think Zeus White is going to be their main guy, but they have a nice 1-2 combo. Zeus, the ground and pound guy. Cook, your more kind of like Dalvin, his older brother. He's more of a receiving back, elusive guy that can get yards, but can also kind of lower the shoulder and lay a boom as well.
Yeah, Georgia, they had a lot of news in the offseason regarding quarterbacks. They acquired Jamie Newman, and then I believe Daniels also soon after made his commitment to Georgia. Newman then opted out. Daniels was new, learning the playbook, still coming back from that ACL. We don't know the full story, but we're believing that's going to play a part into it, because there's no way that he was not the best quarterback there at practice, even with Newman out there. Even though I don't think those two practiced alongside together, but regardless, I think that plays into a big hand of why he didn't play early in the season. But he's fully healthy. He gets George Pickens back, Kearis Jackson. George Pickens, one of the nation's top receivers. He just hasn't had the guys throwing to him to showcase his skills. He has that now with Daniels.
Right.
Blitnikoff Award finalist, maybe 1,100-yard type season. Georgia receivers never usually have stellar production, but I think they're going to really air it out this season.
Yeah, and another guy worth mentioning, Jermaine Burton, and even Darnell Washington. I mean, he's the LeBron James of college football, quite literally. The guy's 6'7", 6'8", about 250, 260 pounds, and he's a beast. So he didn't really get a whole lot of playing time. He did, but he wasn't really targeted as much. I think he will be more of a target in this upcoming year, because it seems as if Georgia could be moving to more of a passing offense. Not that they can't run the ball, but when you've got a quarterback like JT Daniels, you're going to want to throw the ball a little bit more, and I think they could use Darnell under red zone situations especially.
Yeah, they also are in talks to potentially land Eric Gilbert from the transfer portal. Not much news recently on that, but that's just out there. I think Todd Monken, he's going to have his work kind of cut out for him for how he can utilize all these guys, because that's been a big question over the years with Georgia. They don't utilize offensive talent correctly. I think the narrative is going to change this season. Hopefully for Kirby Smart's sake that it does, because they have all the weapons to win the SEC outright.
Yeah, and switching script to the defense, Nakobe Dean, he had 71 tackles, and he was a part of the number 1 rush defense in back-to-back seasons, which is unheard of, especially even in the SEC. A guy that I'm really looking forward to seeing this year is Adam Anderson, outside linebacker. I think he is going to be a force to be reckoned with. Him, and like you said, you mentioned it earlier, Georgia's one of those teams that they don't have a lot of guys that are stat patters per se. It's just a by committee type deal.
Yeah, Azeez Ojulari, the top pass rusher, he's gone. Adam Anderson comes to fill in, a former 5-star. This will be his 4th season on campus. He really made plays last season, 6.5 sacks. I'd expect him to probably hit the double-digit mark this season. He's going to be the top guy off the edge. Keely Ringo as well, because Georgia, they lose 3 starters in the secondary. 3, technically 4 maybe. Depends how you look at the lineup. But Keely Ringo, he's gonna have to step in. This secondary, I'm not really concerned, because these guys typically fill out quite well. But when you lose that much, with that much experience, especially when you play Clemson in week 1, it's going to be a bit of a concern.
It kind of throws that kind of throws a little issue in there whenever they lost Eric Stokes gone to the draft, Tyson Campbell gone to the
Mark
draft,
Webb
but
as
they
well.
also have Tyreek Stevenson, who's not going to. He returned. He's decided to transfer to the University of Miami. That's a big loss, and so I think Keely Ringo is going to be arguably their top corner. Maybe not right off the bat, but he's a guy that's going to get enhanced playing time a lot.
Yeah, DJ Daniel, another one of those guys. I think they really lost about 5 guys in the secondary. A lot of depth could become a concern in the secondary. I haven't looked at their recruiting class in depth, fully, but they've recruited very well. Nayland Green, he's another one of those guys. He's a freshman incoming. I think he's going to play a lot. Got a nice skill set. I think I think you might have to lean on some of these younger guys, but we'll see how it works out.
Yeah, Georgia's been typically, they're pretty good about doing that, throwing their younger guys into the fire per se, but they don't typically, react too bad to it. Their guys have been really good. I mean, they tried to incorporate Justin Fields, his first year at Georgia, his freshman year, although it wasn't in a real quarterback role, but they show that they want to get their top guys out there on the field. So I'm really thinking, I'm with you on that. I think Neyland Green's going to be a guy that really gets his number called quite a bit on defense.
Yeah, like we said, they play Clemson week 1. Speaking of Clemson, that is our number 1 team. I'd like to jump right to defense. They get all 11 starters back. Their defensive line is nothing but 5-star guys. Miles Murphy, Brian Breese, Xavier Thomas. He wasn't healthy last season. He's expected to be back. Considering how bad they played against Ohio State, Brett Venables and these guys all coming back, they're going to have a fire in their eye, and they're going to play with a similar attitude to maybe the 2000 Ravens. These guys are going to, not, what I mean by that. They're going to be playing with a fiery aggressiveness. These guys are going to be
right.
I say this is going to be the best defense in football, considering the emotion, considering the experience back. How do you feel about that?
Well, I'm going to put it this way. I think they're pissed off for greatness. Mm-hmm. I think they really want to. 11 guys coming back. Not only do they have that chemistry, I mean, a lot of these guys came in the same recruiting class. Linebacker Nick Skowski, I think Nick, right?
James Skowski.
James Skowski, excuse me. James Skowski, he's coming back, and he's been there for the past few years. And Clemson loves to have a really solid middle linebacker or linebacker core that they can really lean on. One of the things they pride themselves on is getting to the quarterback and having a great rush defense. And I think their lackluster performance against Ohio State, it has a lot of these guys, because the defense was the one that got picked on. They made Justin Fields look like he should have won the Heisman. And I think that they're going to come back, and that's going to be, that score is probably, if I'm Dabo Swinney, I'm printing that score out and I'm putting it at every corner of the locker room, just so it's a reminder to these guys that we don't want that to happen again. And I think they're going to come back defensively and do very well along with Andrew Booth, one of their corners. He's going to step up this year. He's going to be a top guy. So I think I'm not really concerned about the defense for Clemson. It's great year in, year out, but 11 guys coming back on a national powerhouse, it's looking really good for Clemson defensively.
Yeah, it's scary. They struggled in the secondary big time with communication. That was their biggest issue. Venables, these guys are built around discipline. I think that's going to get cleaned up big time. Against James Skowski, he's a Ben Boulware type, the true quarterback of the defense. Very impressive, nice guy to have back. Flipping to the offense, Trevor Lawrence, he's gone. DJ Uiagalelei, he started 2 games in relief of Lawrence last season, and I said the same thing before his first start, and I'm gonna say it again before this season. They're gonna be fine at quarterback, and he proved that, and I think they're gonna be fine again in 2021.
Yeah, there is no reason, if I'm a Clemson fan, there's no reason to be concerned about the quarterback position. DJ, he was also he wasn't really a star, but in QB1, I believe season 2, he pretty much took over Real Mitchell's spot at one of the high schools in California. I can't exactly remember which one, but he's a competitor, and he adds a little bit more of what it's a different kind of quarterback than what he's getting or what he had with Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence, they're both about the same, almost size-wise. DJ's got a little bit more weight on him in a good way. He's a big runner, not afraid to run through somebody, and I think that's one thing that we could see a little bit differently in this upcoming season with Clemson, is a little bit more designed quarterback runs, because they just were worried about keeping Trevor healthy, which they did for the most part. He was healthy throughout his whole entire career. And DJ, he's a guy that he embraces the contact. So I'm really looking forward to see him, and he's got a great receiving core coming back. Justin Ross, hopefully he can be healthy. Frank Ladson, EJ Williams, Agile, and then Joseph Ngata. They're all great talents. They do lose a few guys, but I think they'll be fine offensively.
Yeah, the receiving core is kind of a question mark for me. They're loaded with talent, but they were all kind of pressed into action last year. They didn't always exactly weren't on the same page with Lawrence. I think that's going to change a little bit this season. Off-season practice was delayed because of COVID or just flat out canceled, and that really hurt that development. I think they're fine at running back. They lose Travis and Etienne, but they get Lynn J. Dixon back. He's been also kind of like Brian Robinson, a moderate backup. He hasn't really had that much. He hasn't had any spotlight really. 1,300 plus yards in his career. Speedy, elusive guy, and they also get Will Shipley, who I know you're almost in love with as a recruit.
Yeah, I like Will. He's a heck of an athlete. He's one of the top all-purpose backs in the country. I think he fits the mold of a little bit of a Travis Etienne guy. He may not be as fast or as physical, but he's a guy that, you want him involved in your passing game. He's not just a running back. He's a receiver as well. And, I don't know if it's a little early, but hey, we could see the next Christian McCaffrey for Clemson and the Tigers.
Yeah, with Shipley, he's speedster 4.4, 4.5 in that category. And I think a lot of people are going to be shocked by the speed that the Clemson backfield has. Put him and Dixon back there, Fugagali, and these guys are just going to be tough to defend. No matter who's at receiver, the speed on the outside. I think Tony Elliott, he's going to have some fun this upcoming season with the guys he's getting back.
Yeah, one more running back that I think could possibly get his name in there a little bit more is Ches Malusi. He's not really. I don't know if he'll get fall behind in the depth chart because of the addition of Will Shipley, because he's a top guy. But Ches got a little bit of running time or a little bit of play time behind Lynn J. Dixon and Travis Etienne. So I think Ches is going to also move up, and he could become that Brian Robinson guy that kind of falls a little bit behind in the depth chart just until it's his time to get called.
Yeah, that's going to wrap it up for our top 10. Really thrilled with what we have. Before we wrap it up, let's kind of talk about Tennessee and Texas. Tennessee, they're going through a lot right now. Currently with the firing of Jeremy Pruitt, there's going to be major sanctions coming. I don't think you're going to see the sanctions from the NCAA as harsh as USC was, but I think you as a Miami fan see something similar to that happening.
Yeah, I don't think Tennessee is going to get the death penalty. It was questioned at one point for the University of Miami back in the mid-2000s, early 2000s. I don't think Tennessee's going to get that. They're too much of a blue blood historically, maybe not recently, but and plus they're in the SEC. They're well funded. I think it's going to be a rough 4 to 5 years for Tennessee. Maybe it's going to be hard to get a big name head coach, and a guy that we mentioned on here, Ty Chandler. He transferred from Tennessee. The other day they lost Keyshawn Lawrence. He's a top top safety that they recruited. It just seems as if they're losing talent left and right, and it's not close.
Yeah, they had a lot of decommitments. Dylan Brooks, their top signee, actually requested that he be released from his national letter of intent. I expect that would go through. They've had a total of 23 players as of a few nights ago currently in the portal or have already committed to another place. Big Cat Bryant, one of those guys who said he's not going to go ahead and go there. Hendon Hooker, they got for Virginia Tech. He has yet to make a decision. These guys are really going to be depleted. I think it's going to create a lot of opportunities for these lower recruited guys because they're going to be strapped in when it comes to depth. They're not going to be They're not going to be able to land 4 to 5 star guys. So I think there's going to be plenty of opportunities for people out there. But altogether, Tennessee, they're probably going to develop into a bottom feeder in the SEC.
I'm not entirely sure if. We know that the team itself is going to face repercussions from the NCAA. I'm not entirely sure if they will go in depth onto who received the incentives, because I don't believe there were names thrown out. But, one could assume that a lot of guys are transferring out. Maybe those are some of the guys that, got a little bit of McDonald's cash money right there. So, I kind of hate it for a lot of these guys because it's, you don't want to bribe young kids to go to your school. And you bribe them anyway, and what do you put up, like a below 500 record? I hate to see it for a lot of these guys, although, they were bribed. I think that could also be kind of a question mark for some of these teams. They're more than just a name. They might have a little bit of baggage on them. I don't think it will be the case for every single player, but I don't know. I'm with you on Tennessee being a little bit of a bottom feeder. I don't know if they'll be as bad as Vanderbilt, but They, like you said, Hendon Hooker, he's a good quarterback. I think if he's there, that will kind of provide a little bit of stability. He's a good dual threat quarterback for Virginia Tech. So I'm very worried. Don't get it twisted. I'm very worried about Tennessee. But if they can keep Hendon Hooker, that's one of the best plus signs that you can see from this whole fiasco.
Yeah, the only one really, they already lost 3 quarterbacks to the transfer portal, so depth is going to be, an issue there. They lost their top 2 linebackers, Quavarius Crouch and Henry Tuowo. He's gone as well. Those guys are all in the portal. So the talent on this team is really we can touch on it as much as we want, but there's not going to be a lot of talent here, which, it really might assist the other teams in the SEC who are trying to hunt them down.
Right.
For comparison, Miami in 2013, when those penalties got imposed, there was a 2-year... Miami self-imposed a 2-year postseason ban, so we'll probably see that from Tennessee. Also, all the assistants and coaches involved, they all had show cause penalties, so... We don't know the full details yet. There's still an ongoing investigation into that, so... but I would expect something similar to that. Maybe 9 to 12 lost scholarships as well.
Miami's was a little bit more severe, in my opinion. What they did was more severe than what Tennessee has done. So I think it would be I could see a little bit of the same result. But the scholarship ban, I think, is something that will probably be most likely for Tennessee.
Yeah, I'd say about 9 to 12 maybe. I think Miami had 9 to scatter out through those years. USC, they were vacated 30 scholarships when their sanction said. That was just absolutely brutal.
Yeah.
So, for a second, let's touch bases on Texas. We're going to quickly talk about their offense with Steve Sarkisian. These guys have a lot of talent coming back. Bijan Robinson, Joshua Moore. I think that there's a lot of talent in place. They're loaded at running back. Roshan Johnson, one of those guys. I think there's going to be a lot of wrinkles in this offense. I think it's going to be an exciting unit in 2021. Do you feel the same way?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Texas hasn't been terrible offensively the past few years, and a lot of that is accredited to Sam Ehlinger, who he's been there for quite a while. And I honestly I thought he would come back for another year just because he seems like he, bleeds, burnt orange.
Yeah, I was surprised he didn't come back as well.
Yeah, it just seemed as if, him and, Tom Herman were going to, it's kind of almost a match made in heaven. But, reports of Tom Herman being kind of a, lackluster coach there. And I think Steve Sarkisian is going to bring an entirely different dynamic offensively. We saw what he did at Alabama. And I'm really looking forward to see how he does with Casey Thompson, who had a relief in the bowl game. I can't remember exactly who they played. But
Colorado
Colorado.
in Alamo Bowl.
And he provided some good relief. I mean, he came in and I don't know if he missed a single pass, and he just had a blast along with Bijan Robinson, Roshan Johnson, like you touched base with that. Those guys are going. That's one of the best running back rooms in the Big 12, and they even ran out one of the arguably one of the best running backs in the Big 12 before Bijan made a name for himself and Keontae Ingram. So he's one of the bigger names at running back on the transfer portal market.
Yeah, they're gonna. I think Sark's gonna add a lot of wrinkles to the offense. Regardless of talent at Alabama, there's still a lot of wrinkles that are hard to defend about that unit. You've seen that at Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin, regardless of the talent. And if you have amplified talent, it just makes it so much harder to defend. So I think Texas offense is going to be fun this year. Hopefully the administration gives them a couple years to build it up there on both sides of the ball. Very exciting things going on at Texas, regardless of impatient fans. I'm really excited to see that talent, though, this upcoming season.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think, that's one of the things that, we see a lot of the same teams in the playoff, and it's like there are a lot of fan bases of blue blood teams. They get impatient. It's, it's kind of, it's a little difficult, but, I think Texas, they'll be fine. One of their biggest things, I'm not really worried about their offense. It's just their defense that I think really needs to get cleared up.
Yeah, so I think that's going to wrap it up. I appreciate you having me on, Rowdy. Everyone, make sure the social medias will be in the bio. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. We'll love to answer them. So I think that's going to be everything, Rowdy. You have anything else to add?
No, that's it. Thank you for having me on, as always.
Yeah, for sure, man. Everyone have a good day. Everyone subscribe, leave a like, and have a good day.